Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Just looking at it. Thank you. I'd like to call to order the Board of Education meeting, 7:30, February 27th, 2018. If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance as well as a moment of silence. Yes, ma'am.
We didn't adjourn from the last meeting.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I just wanted to be clear.
I'm sorry, everybody. Can we do it after?
Quick motion to adjourn for the last meeting and open the beginning meeting?
Could we have a quick,
So moved.
any discussion?
Great.
Thank you.
Just a procedure.
My mistake. Okay. And please join me in a moment of silence as well, especially after our events in the last weeks and so. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
and thank you. Okay, and our first order of business is recognition, and I'll turn that over to Mr. Smith.
So, glad to have such a good crowd tonight. So at the beginning of meetings, just in case you're joining us for the first time, we like to each month recognize students and staff in the district. And I don't know if Brett's here tonight, but Brett is our geography winner. I see Mr. Here we are. So the first person we're going to recognize tonight, and Dr. Longo, if you want to come up. So Brett Kornhaus won so far the SMS Geography Bee with a perfect score. So as a former social studies teacher, I'm not going head-to-head with you right now. There's no questions tonight, but I don't know if you want to say a couple words, Dr. Longo, about the competition and Brett's...
Yeah, well, the competition started at the classroom level and then trickled down to some finalists. We were so excited to have Dr. T join us because that was a signature when he was at Scatacoca, partnering with us with the Geography Bee. So he asked some questions, and then we narrowed down the field, and Brett really impressed us. And in the final round, and Mr. Corporal was there to witness it as well. Very impressive. So well-deserved honor. And Brett, congratulations, and good luck at the state level.
We have a big globe here. Again, I won't quiz you on it tonight. Thank you. Good job. Thanks.
Wow.
Oh, here, Brett. It's for the camera.
Thank you.
And so, online, there's a anonymous way to recommend staff that are outstanding members of our community. And then this month, they'll each come up, and we recognize them with a pin. And then one of those pins has a little red sticker on it, and that staff member will be able to drive an SUV from Ingersoll Auto for the month. And as an appreciation to the staff. So our first star of the month is Miss Shannon Arcano. And the comment for Shannon was, "I'm grateful for Mrs. Arcano's regular and positive emails regarding my son's progress at school. I know how very busy an elementary school teacher's day is, and so it's appreciated that she's taking the time to establish a positive relationship with our family. I wanted to share with you that she's really going above and beyond what I would consider to be her expected duties, and I'm thrilled to receive the positive reports. It would make it much easier to receive a negative report because I can see that she's invested and cares about my child's experience. So maybe she should get an Oscar, and an Oscar is a student award here at Sarah Noble. So from New Milford High School is Miss Victoria Giudice. Victoria is an New Milford High School graduate. She's a dedicated PE teacher. She encourages all her students to persevere with hopes and dreams. She tries to instill the confidence her students need to reach goals in life. To quote one student, she encourages me to be the best person I can be and makes coming to school better. So thank you, Shannon. Victoria. From Scatticoke is Miss Robin Hicks. Robin Hicks is a teacher that all students wish they had in their corner. She is supportive, warm, and compassionate. She earns the respect of her students by showing them respect. Thank you, Ms. Hicks. From our non-school specific, we have a lot of staff that don't work in any one specific school, is Mr. Roger Hill. Roger does a terrific job in all seasons. He's always positive and willing to pitch in and help others. Thank you, Roger. From Northville is Miss Stephanie Segaria. I think Stephanie's here. There she is. Stephanie has such a wonderful love of teaching that beams from her daily. My son comes home from school every day, so excited to tell me of the wonderful things he was taught. The love of learning that she's instilled in my 6-year-old is so amazing, and I am grateful every day that my son has her for a teacher. And from Hill and Plain is Miss Lynn Shear. My daughter is excelling in reading in large part to Library Day. She looks forward to going to the library every week, and her love of books is constantly growing. Want to do the honors of the pick well. Good luck.
Pick well.
Go ahead.
You choose.
The boxes are not marked on the outside. They have no idea what's in them. You want to open your boxes? And then on the inside cover, if you're the lucky winner, it'll be a red smiley face or a yellow smiley face. Miss Hicks, you are the winner of a brand new card. Consolidation gifts, they're almost as good as a card. That you can keep longer than a
No, these are the keys to the car.
Can I get this in addition?
No, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
You have to save the photos and
Okay, we're going to take a short recess before public comment. Okay, before we get to public comment, I'd ask the board if we could take a look at item G,
11G.
11G, thank you. And move that up before public comment. Any objections? And 11G, security discussion, right now. Now, I'm going to check with the parliamentarian first.
If there's no issues with the board, you can move it up and then open public after our discussion.
Correct. Any? Okay, then. Mr. Smith, I'll turn it over to you.
So thank you. This evening, the Board of Ed met with the Chief of Police and the school resource officer from the high school, along with the central office administration. We reviewed the security protocols that are in place in all of the schools. We reviewed the work that's been done over the past several years to secure our schools, both kind of hard and soft physical changes, as well as procedural changes, and some of the investments that have been made over the last 5 years. Those investments are substantial with the support of the community, totaling, well over $750,000 have been invested in the schools. And that doesn't include the ongoing support with the SROs and the partnership with the police department. One of the things that we did put together is a public-facing version of that briefing that Mr. Giovanone may have put over there already.
No, he hasn't.
He'll be putting it over there, and so people can pick up a copy of that if they'd like. That is a summary of all of the areas that we've talked about in the executive session tonight. And then, in addition to that, all of the schools today had after-school meetings reviewing the security protocols and procedures in each of the schools to help reassure staff on the protocols that we have in place.
Thank you. Any discussion on what's in front of you? And anything there?
Were you planning on giving a discussion on a possible workshop opening?
Yeah, I would like to open, because of the restrictions of this type of forum, where we cannot answer questions or things like that with the public, in conjunction with the New Milford Police Department, we are planning to have a community forum on school safety and security. We haven't got a date yet, but we hope it will be in the very, very, very near future. And with that being said, I'd like to thank, again, the cooperation and the professionalism shown by the New Milford Police Department. So that is something that we will get out to you as soon as we have firmed up times and dates. Any other comments on that? And again, this document that's a summary, for those of you that would like, it's over on the side. You don't have to get it now, but if you would like it for your purview. Okay, sensing none. If I could now, we'll move on to public comment. Do we have anybody, sir?
Yes, we do. We have Miss Katie Grinnell.
Katie Grinnell, 30 Treadwell Avenue. I'm here representing a body of students who are coming together to organize a student walkout on March 14th. We thought it would be best to let you all know that we are working in conjunction with administration and local police to make this a safe event where our opinions can be heard, and we are using this to mainly empower students to understand the presence that we can have, and for all of us who will be turning 18 before the next election, to empower those to register to vote, because that is the most important way that your voice can be heard. It will be held at the high school. We aren't going off campus. It's just going to be for 17 minutes. I don't know what else to tell you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Any other comments? You don't have to be signed up if you'd like, anybody. Okay, moving on.
Excuse me, I can see.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. He didn't want to.
Jim Corbett from 48 Turkey Chocolate League. I've been in this town a long time, grew up in this area, and on the security, what's going on, and I know you can't comment on a lot of things, just want to give a couple of proposals. I am in the security business. I've been doing it since 1974, cameras, access control, and I do some work in Milford. But for our students and for town buildings and where things, and I'm also on a couple boards in New Milford, and I see the police here, and actually makes everybody feel comfortable with that. And for our students, and I noticed resource officer, if there was a police officer, like what happened in Cowboy, and I know a lot of Brookfield officers in New Milford, after that happened, there was officers in a lot of schools. And I know the practicality is not there at all. So you really have to look at security of how you're going to take the place and make it safe. I think locking all doors down so kids can't get in or out, is it practical? I think it's a great thing to do. You need to really make it, you got to do a choke point where kids getting in. So people coming with backpacks, maybe metal detectors, dollars, it is a big thing, but a life, there's no price on it. But also the thing is, I was thinking, talking to some other people in Connecticut, is the police, I'd love to see 2 officers in every school. I go to an airport, and there's shotguns. There's National Guard there, there's military people. Feels good. Maybe you can be a thing with the state. They can say, listen, would 2 officers in every school per amount of students be practical from National Guard or even the military? We have great military, where they're on bases, they send 2 for an 8-10 hour period. That's part of their stint in the military duty. They're already getting paid by the feds. Okay, so is it a big budget hit to a town? I don't think so. Is it practical? The police maybe can talk and maybe work with it. Would military at every school in the country, say 2 officers per 2,000 students, whatever, would that be good? 2 guys, 4 guys, whatever it may be. Is it something that's viable? I just want to make that point. Is it viable? I don't know the answer to that. But I think you do have to look at choke points, maybe locking down a school. I think when kids pull fire alarms and kids go running out, there's a target right there. I think you can change. I know the rule. I know all the fire codes. Technically, you're supposed to evacuate, but you can stay in the building. Keep them from running out. Lock down doors. Because when a fire, think about the high school. What would happen? Is the building going to burn to the ground? Probably not. The building's built right now, especially Sandy Hook, the new building over there, very secure. So think about doing choke points and locking kids in where they can't get out. My daughter, which she graduated last year from, I used to come pick her up, walk to the side door by the athletic field all the time. Kids let me in. They didn't know if I had a gun or whatever it may be. Granted, it was after classes, but think about the locking out of people and having more people around. I know it's not practical on budget for police to be here, but maybe military, maybe National Guard, maybe on a whole large scale, something to think about. So I just want to put that point across. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to defer to the parliamentarian very quickly. I received a letter to be read in public comment.
Sure.
Okay. This is a letter from Mayor Pete Bass, dated February 27th, 2018. Chairman Lawson, I apologize for not being able to attend tonight's Board of Education meeting, as I will be at budget hearings at Town Hall. I did want to thank you, Superintendent Josh Smith, Principal Chris Longo, for the tour of Schaghticoke Middle School and the security measures that have been put in place to protect students and staff. It was reassuring to see the plan that is in place not only as mayor, but as a father as well. Thank you to the Board of Education, staff, and New Milford Police Department for your continued vigilance in keeping our children safe. And public comment? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Stephanie Carlson, 19 Miabella Drive. I just wanted to bring up something also to think about. I've been subbing in the schools, and as a substitute, although I'm an experienced retired teacher, as a substitute, I'm new to the buildings, other than my children who have attended them, but I'm completely unaware of safety precautions. I know what my job is that day. I think I get a key and a folder, but as far as really securing that classroom and being in charge, God forbid something happened the day that I was there and didn't know exactly what to do. So I don't know if this is a sources for teachers' responsibility or if it's for the school to let substitutes know when they're in a particular building, an area, whether it's the library or the gym or a classroom, just so that they're aware of emergency protocol.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carlson.
Any other comment? Okay, sensing none, we'll move on to the PTO report. Thank you for coming, ma'am.
Good evening. We are into the second half of the school year with a lot of fun activities planned for our students. The K-5 schools are concentrating on reading with readathons, book fairs, and author visits. The students' families also get to participate with great events like Bingo for Books, S'mores Family Night, and March Madness. March Madness is one of Northville's biggest events with games, entertainment, and a silent auction. The PTO is also working with Susan Brofford on science fairs. The K through 5 fair is March 15th. The K through 2 schools fairs is March 21st. I encourage you to stop by to see the students' project. They really enjoy this event. Scattergoat students arrived at this school on Valentine's Day to find the school showered with hearts, a nice way to start the day. The PTO is also sponsoring the Scholastic Book Fair and a sixth grade dance. The grad party held their annual wine tasting last Friday and had a strong turnout. Future fundraisers include Paint and Wine on March 16th, Medium Night April 6th, and the famous Junk in the Trunk on April 29th. The PTO also sponsored their second Kids Expo to raise funds for the Scholarship Fund. Our March Spirit theme is School Color Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Student representatives,
Good evening, everyone.
good evening.
To start off, this is coming Thursday at Milford High School. We are holding a concert for jazz band, chorus, and orchestra. And don't let me forget, we also have a jazz combo, which is a smaller little jazz band we got going, and also another group called the Snake Charmers, which is a fun little group of a drummer, bass, some small little groups. It'll be a fun night, some cool tunes you may recognize. And also, yesterday was the first annual SWC for our bowling team, and New Milford High School won, which is a great accomplishment, and hopefully there'll be some more down the road.
Recently, the New Milford Social Services has been collecting hygiene items for the homeless, and the New Milford High School Honor Society has been collecting pet food items as well.
As we roll into March, all of our AP students at the high school are preparing for AP exams in May. So at the end of this week, we'll be holding some meetings to prepare for registration and getting ready to take those exams.
The Dramatics Club has been working on creating skits for their annual FNL, which is Friday Night Live, it's a spin-off of Saturday Night Live. As well as the students have been coming together on Saturdays to build the sets for the all-school musical Curtains, which has been coming along great. I'm really excited for the show. And the junior class has also been meeting with their guidance counselors to discuss senior year and getting ready for applying to colleges and everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we'll move on to approval of minutes. I need a motion to approve the following Board of Education meeting minutes. Annual meeting minutes, December 19th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. I need a motion to approve the following Board of Education meeting minutes, regular meeting minutes, December 19th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. I need a motion to approve the following Board of Education meeting minutes, regular meeting minutes, January 9, 2018.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. I need a motion to approve the following Board of Education meeting minutes, budget hearings and adoption minutes for January 16th, January 17th, 23rd, and 24th of 2018.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. And for the superintendent's report, there in your packet is the Next Gen report. Mr. Smith.
So good evening, again. So the Next Gen Accountability Report, last year was the first year that the state created this reporting process. Yeah, there's a lot of it, and it's really small print. It's also available publicly through the state's Ed site, which is their data reporting system. The state created this next generation of accounting procedures to provide a point of reference for school districts, both internally and kind of comparison across school districts. The state has set benchmark targets for us as a school district, and then on each of these categories, how our students perform is how we get rated against those benchmarks. We also get kind of compared to the state as an indexing rate. Many of the data points in here you have seen before in other forms. They were part of the fall assessment report that happened. Other data points are captured in here for the first time. This will show up at several points over the next few months. This will help inform the work this summer when we look at writing goals for next year, when we compare last year's report to this year's report and some of the progress we're making. In most cases, this reaffirms, or in all cases, this reaffirms the work that we're doing. The work that we're doing around literacy is kind of validated by the results here. I think overall, the town of New Milford has outscored the state average in most categories. But I want you to have this. I want you to know that it's public and that you can use this to help inform some of the decisions as we go forward. So this will show up in a lot of different areas. Last year, I spent a lot of time going over each of the pieces. I won't take up as much time at this meeting, but it'll show up through other reports throughout the year.
Okay, thank you. And chair report. Well, first of all, I would again like to thank the New Milford Police Department for their cooperation, their dedication, their expediency, and professionalism that they have shown in the last several days, and quite frankly, all along. Again, I'd like to explain that we will be having a community forum. We'll let the public know when we have a firm date for that, in which we can be more interactive. Also, conversations with the mayor continue on this year's state reductions in our budget and the town's budget, as well as anticipated state reductions in next year's budget. Presently, we are examining some of our encumbrances on litigation and examining our, liabilities there. Furthermore, we are waiting for balances in our self-insured medical plan to see if we can realize any savings. When I say our, I'm referring to the town as well as the Board of Education, and we're examining those to see if there's any savings there. And then finally, tomorrow night, we will be presenting to the joint Town Council and Board of Finance, our budget, and I encourage any of you to attend if you so desire. We're at the front end of the agenda, not the first one, but we're at the front end, and that's where we're at for that. So thank you very much.
David, what time does that start?
That's a very good question. I have it written down right in front of me,
Okay.
and it's 7 o'clock, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, moving on to committee and liaison reports. Facilities, Mr. McCauley. Brian.
Yep, we had a very good meeting, I guess a couple Tuesdays ago. Some of the main items of discussion involved the fuel tank report and this thermal scan roof repair, which will be coming up later tonight, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on that. We also got a winter update, and it's been a very interesting winter in New Milford, and they've been working really hard to keep our schools cleared on these days. There's been some overtime involved, as there always is, but they're being very careful to keep an eye on that, and some snow repairs, which I think we're all aware of. as homeowners. Anyway, and they also had a fire hydrant update, which there'll be 2 fire hydrants being replaced at Cernoble and Scotticoke, and we'll hear more about that later as that comes about. It was a very good meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Operations, Mrs. Fallenbeck?
Yes, we also had a good meeting. We had several items on the committee that you'll see on here for discussion. Besides our regular monthly reports, you'll see an update from a memo regarding some questions that came up at operations, which a memo was sent out to the board regarding the salary transfers and security enhancements and the breakdown of the dollar amount there. So if it comes up under the monthly portion, if there's any questions, I think board members can go through that. We have, at the time of operations, we had not been at the town to hear about the audit report, so the audit report is on here for discussion or any questions regarding that with the memo attached. We also had a discussion regarding the fuel tanks, as there may be some financial implications in trying to get the discussions moving along on timeframes and what those dollar amounts may be. And we had a executive session to review the Sherman contract, in which the board will have on this evening for approval for a 3-year contract, I believe. 18 to 21? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And policy, JT?
Thanks, Mr. Wilson. Policy, you'll see 5 different items on for tonight. One of those is for second review. It's the distribution of materials to and by students and the use of students. You'll see that, again, for the second time. There's some fast-track policies that are up for approval tonight. Just to give you the highlights there. There are a lot of these policies, well, all these policies, are really driven by changes in state statute. So these come through from the state, and I'm starting to understand too, the October and the February dates we should almost set aside in policy just to accommodate the state legislative changes. One of those you'll see is the criminal history inquiries and reference checks that is colloquially referred to as pass the trash legislation. The look-back period actually extends now to 20 years. The other side of that is actually provides some good clarity for the background checks and what good faith efforts would be. So for someone like Ellie who's looking at these background checks that span back those 20 years, it gives some guidance to human resource departments there. Additionally, you'll see sexual and unlawful harassment. Veterans have been added as a protected class in that harassment legislation. So that is a change to our policy here. And you'll also see expulsion legislation. Again, some changes there, and there's additional guidance from the State Department of Education. And I believe, Mr. Corpo, you shared a little bit of that in our policy meeting. So there is some guidance from the state as to what what is considered adequate compensatory education outside of a school setting. So that's actually helpful from the state and to make sure that we our programs align with those suggestions or requirements. And also, forgetting, there's one other one here too. The use of physical force, there were some changes there, and it also brought to the idea of training some of our staff specifically for how to deal with the use of force and in specific populations of students, but also with specific groups of employees. So not all employees necessarily, but some employees that would be on those front lines that would be required to maybe use force in their roles. And let's see. The state mastery exam, we actually put that on hold, so you don't see it on tonight's agenda. There were some elements there that we felt that it would probably be better to put on hold and have legal review, and we'll bring that back. But just a reminder to our policy committee members, as we continue to look at setting the agenda for this following month, I would encourage you to take a look at the 1000 series, and if there's anything there for community relations, this is kind of our chance to look back again. And I know we had some other ones that we talked about. We'd like to get those to the agenda, and also probably 6146 back to the subcommittee to talk about. And I think that's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
And thank you. And Committee on Learning.
Yes, we had our Committee on Learning, our curriculum meeting on February 6th, and we had a great presentation by several of our physical education teachers regarding the curriculum of K through 12, and we will see that later on the agenda tonight. The curriculum was created using SHAPE, the Society of Health and Physical Educators America Grade Level Outcomes for K through 12 PE. And what this document does is ties the standards to grade level outcomes and gives the progression for meeting skills by certain grade levels. It's used by many districts in conjunction with the national standards to guide skill progression. So what this looks like at the individual schools is very interesting. At K through 2 level, the skills include the hop, skip, and the jump, beginning to use the skills in games, learning fairness, and cooperating with others. In our intermediate school, grades 3 through 5, students now apply those basic skills to modified games, putting more than one skill together in a non-competitive atmosphere. And once they get up to the middle school, students have units on individual team sports, fitness and dance, and games. And at SMS, there is a focus on cooperative games, which builds collaborative skills that students will eventually need in the workplace. And at the high school levels, activities are grouped into lifetime, recreational, and team sports. Students are offered choices of activities within each unit and are allowed to stick with an activity if they really like. So they're not forced to jump into different activities if there's something that they really do enjoy, such as walking or track or some other activity. And the idea is that it may lead to a lifetime activity or a career path eventually. So it was a really great presentation, and we'll see this later on for approval.
Okay, thank you very much. And Ed Advance, Brian.
Well, I was unable to attend the Ed Advance meeting, but I can give you some highlights from the minutes. And a couple of things there. Ed Advance is negotiating to purchase some properties in Torrington to expand their services there, and they're looking to purchase St. Mary's, the St. Mary's School and Church, as well as St. Peter's School, both in Torrington, and to purchase part of the former Yukon campus. So they're really looking on expanding their programs. They also had the audit report was presented, and they lost some revenue this year, but it was more based on some repairs that they had to make and some expansions they had to make to the Access program in Danbury. So they were expected losses, but otherwise they're in a good financial position. Ed Advance is a very interesting organization. They do a lot.
And Cabe, and again, I have nothing to report at this time, so we'll move on to negotiations.
Negotiations has its first meeting soon, next day or two, I believe? Thursday, thank you. And it'll be myself, Ms. McInerney, and Mr. Dahl, as well as the administration team, and we'll begin that and report back to the board accordingly.
Thank you. And the Magnet School. Eileen?
I have nothing, no report on that.
This time, okay, thank you. Okay, moving on, number 10, discussion and possible action. Exhibit A. I need a motion to approve Exhibit A, personnel certified, non-certified appointments, resignations, and leaves of absences as of February 27th, 2018.
So moved.
Second?
Any-
The revised sent today.
Yeah. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Thank you. I do want to say, take a look at Exhibit A. Thank you for the update here, and I know this is such a dynamic and fluid document. Two things I really just want to call attention to. One is I'm just very impressed with the number of volunteers that we are able to secure for some of our sport teams, and I would think that adds additional coaches for these programs. So I think that's really a testament to that volunteerism in our community. But I was just floored by once you have the spring season here, you really start to get a sense for how many people are stepping up and answering this call. So again, I want to thank you for assembling it, but also just being able to have those people in the community and thank them for doing that. I also have to say there's a lot of talent on this page. This first page here with resignations, and it breaks my heart to see such great talent leave the ranks of our staff here. And Ellie, I'll say, to recruit and to retain, and we have to, and I know we've reached out. Some of the work we shared at the board workshops over the summer, getting out and getting up to Yukon to recruit, and I think that was a big push last year for us. But it's really putting all of those Rs together. And, as a board, we need to be cognizant of that too, that the kind of talent that we train that leaves this district, it's not just recruiting, but it's also retaining. So I just think it's worth mentioning. So on the one hand, we've got great volunteers here, but, some people are not going to volunteer in the sense that we can't keep them. So it pains me to just see the talent leave. So I'll leave it there.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. B, monthly reports. I need a motion to approve monthly reports, budget position dated January 31st, 2018, purchase resolution D 707, and a request for budget transfers.
Second, I have a question.
And any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Just a question on the memo that was sent out today regarding the transfers. One of them is dated August. Do we normally go that long? On the memo that was sent to the board?
So the memo I can speak to start, and then feel free to jump in. The question came up at operations for us to tie back those, so.
And this transfer happened in August?
It
was
did.
approved in August, is
That's
the way
correct.
that I read it?
That's correct.
Right.
And so this is just an accounting of kind of how those transfers added up and where they came from.
Got it.
There's
Okay.
nothing new in here,
Got
it's
it.
really just
Okay.
accounting
We've
to
already,
clarify.
these have already passed our committee and already come to the board. This was
Correct.
just to identify the actual time frame when it did, because I didn't pull the actual on that, so,
Right,
okay.
Mr. McCauley had asked kind of how do we get to
Yep.
that number? So
Yep.
this is just an
That makes sense.
accounting.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay, anything else?
Yes. That's the breakout of the 154 in this, yep.
On the budget position, I'll just note that on here in the revenue section on page 404, it does not show excess costs as being received. And this report is as of January 31st.
Do we have an
And to
update
this
on that?
day, the update is we have not received it yet.
I just asked that yesterday.
So
Ask again tomorrow.
I'm
we have
sorry.
our antennas up, and
Yeah.
as soon as we know, we will let everyone else know.
Which actually is a good point, because at the operations meeting next month will be, not that we don't every month, go through the numbers, but we'll be having those discussions and hopefully that update and being able to look at these numbers and where we go.
Thank you.
As a question and clarification, the excess cost payment, the first one is usually the end of February, right?
Correct.
And that's usually 75% of the,
Roughly.
of what we budgeted is 716, right?
And we're just
Well,
waiting to
what
see.
we don't know, so we budgeted based on historics and,
7%.
but we don't know that that's actually going to be the funding level. So that first payment will help guide us. Tomorrow's the end of the month, so, I think tomorrow is the end of the month. And so that should let us know, whether or not we're on track to meet that number.
But it's also the larger of the two payments.
That's correct.
That's correct.
So that's set, it's 75% of whatever
That's right.
the excess cost.
Yes, sir.
One additional thing. I have to say, Anthony, it's really helpful for us to take a look at, the percent used and how much we are putting into encumbrances. I think it gives us some really good, transparency as far as what you're anticipating for expenses. I have to say, I saw a report from the town side, and it really challenged, I was challenged because we're so used to seeing these reports as you've constructed them, and you do a lot of work just to present this as such. To see kind of the munis dump, we have some pretty good clarity on what our expenses are, and we're tracking
And
those
where we're
expenses.
going, yeah.
Right, and I have to say, I saw a munis report from the town side, and it was, 0% spent and nothing encumbered. And I've got to think salary accounts, and so, to those in the community who say, hey, Board of Ed, you're not on top of this, we really are, and we can tell you how much we're paying for the teachers we have on our rolls right now with those encumbrances. And to see that, the salaries, over 90% on everything is encumbered, that's, it's really helpful to tell that story, so.
Now, we just have to get the font a little bit bigger.
Not as bad as these next gen.
Oh, yeah, we'll be having a word about that.
We'll pass that magnifying glass if we do.
Okay, any further comments or questions? Those in favor? Okay, and that's unanimous, thank you. Gifts and donations. I need a motion to accept gifts and donations, PTO Exhibit B, in the amount of $8,967.
So moved?
I'll second that. Any discussion?
Once more, I think it's, it's tremendous what they do. They really do.
Yeah,
It's
we
amazing.
are a blessed community
Yes,
with
we
such
sure
a active and vibrant PTO, well, in all the schools and townwide, absolutely. Okay, those in favor? And that's unanimous, thank you. I need a motion to accept gifts and donations, Lowe's Toolbox for Education Program in the amount of $2,000. I'll move that.
Second.
Any discussion? Again, very gracious for this donation. Those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, on 10D, policy for second review. Any discussion, comments that we can bring back to the policy? Okay. And E, policies for approval. I need a motion to approve the following policies. 411.5/4212.5, criminal history inquiries, employment reference checks, and disclosure of employee information to prospective employers. 2, 4118.112/4218.112, sexual and other unlawful harassment. And number 3, 5144, removal, suspension, expulsion. Number 4, 5157, use of physical force. And those were in, can I have a motion, please? I'll second that. Any discussion? Again, those were in the policy chair's report. Yep, sir.
Could I just add one thing about the,
Absolutely.
that I left out of my report? The use of physical force, there is the requirement that we have a plan in place. And can you help me out, Judge? I know in May of 2018, right, we have to have a plan in place for what the training looks like and what people will be trained, right?
Right, so currently we do train staff, and Mrs. Olson organized kind of the restraint and seclusion training. What the state has asked us to do is kind of codify that and document kind of what those steps look like, and to document it in a clearer format. So that's kind of in process now, and we'll have it in place to meet the state's deadline.
Any further questions or comments? Those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. I need a motion to approve the following curriculum: physical education, K through 12.
So moved.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Joe?
We went through this in subcommittee. It's an extensive program, well-written, and some of my thoughts were addressed, particularly that we need to be inclusive, and yet we still need competitive sports, and students know that that is there for them. And I believe this curricula addressed that across the board. And I know when the PE teacher, I still call them gym teachers, that's the age of me. PE teachers spoke to us. I'm confident we're accomplishing everything to be inclusive for everyone, and yet still understand that competitive sports are important, and that we're fostering students to go on for those that can in a variety of sports. We have a lot of teams in this school system, and they all do well. To add to that, I had the opportunity to be in school on Friday for a tour with some of my fellow Board of Ed folks, and we had the opportunity here in this building to see a PE class, and they were doing a mini Olympic games, and there was a group still, we were in there for, we must have been there 15, 20 minutes, because the students were all engaged, they were all having fun, they were all running around nonstop, and they were rotating through different creative games that were put together, and it was very good to see, and everybody was in there enjoying themselves, and part of it is that being physically active if you can be, and, you know, and it'll come up at some point, we push good nutrition in this school, and we have to combine that with some physical activity, and not charging students to play sports. I'll throw that in there. I've been anti that my entire career. So it was good to see, and it was well done, and we appreciate the opportunity to see what goes on. It's important, I think, for those of us that serve on this board to get in there and see what occurs within our system. It's, you know, we all work, we're in an outside world, most of us don't work in the schools, a lot of us don't work in the school system. It's good to get in there and see what goes on, and I'm very appreciative for all the effort.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Those in favor? Thank you. And Sherman contract. I need a motion to approve the agreement between the New Milford Board of Education and the Sherman Board of Education, and to authorize the board chair to sign the agreement on its behalf.
So moved.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we have a 3-year contract. This is basically what we reviewed at operations, correct?
Correct.
And so if we approve this evening, what is the current number of Sherman students?
I believe it is, I just had 93. Yeah, 93.
Thank you. And what is the next step after you've discussed this with Sherman? Obviously, we've gone back and forth. As the board knows that we've had several discussions here. Do they ratify this, or, and when is that expected to occur?
I would expect that soon after we ratify ours.
Okay, and we anticipate that's fine. And has legal looked at this? There's been no real,
That's correct. Legal
Okay.
has looked at this.
okay, so legal's good, their board's good, okay.
I do have a question. Since it's not ratified, I'm going to have to put it in a hypothetical sense. With the agreement with Sherman and the tuition monies, approximately how much and where does it go?
So we have 2 years. We have this year, we have 93. In next year's budget, we projected 88. And in part, that Sherman is no different than New Milford, and their population has declined slightly as well. And so we had anticipated 103 this year. We had 93 show up, as the class that graduates is larger than the class that comes in. Those 93 students in this year, times the per student cost is approximately $1 million. I know that Mr. Giovanone's looking up the exact number.
Okay, no.
You're looking for the record, that goes to the town.
That goes into
Right,
the
I just want to
town's
know the
revenue. I was getting there.
approximate money of $1 million goes to,
Goes in the town budget.
so it's revenue for the town.
Correct.
It goes into the general fund at the town.
Correct.
The
The town has, if you go to the town's revenue line, there's a carve-out for education. That's in the town's budget. That carve-out is not in our budget.
But the town funds our budget, so it's all a wash, so.
True.
I was just answering the question asked.
Okay,
you
I
know?
just-
I know.
Want to make that clear to anybody out there, like, oh my gosh, the town's getting around, no, it's all the same.
But it doesn't show it. If you look at our budget book, it's
No,
not
it's.
there.
Got it.
So that's what you're looking for.
Any further questions or comments? Those, yes, sir.
I see here in item 10, this hasn't been ratified yet, right?
It's not.
No, that's what we're voting on.
So we see, it says, costs and expenses associated with participation and so on, right? Or other exams to the same extent as with New Milford students, right?
Right.
So I know, like SAT, we're not paying for that, that's a state.
Correct.
But then ACT, I don't think they would have to pay.
Correct.
But AP, where we have, a partial payment for students, dare I ask, that would be commensurate with what our New Milford students would be.
So currently, the Sherman students' exam fee is the same as New Milford's fee. The reason we did not change that is because this gives us the flexibility, should we ever decide in the 3 years to change our policy.
Okay.
We can always do more than this agreement says, we can't do less. And so by leaving this as the most broad, kind of lowest common denominator.
Sure.
Should we ever decide no longer to fund AP exams, we don't have to go back and renegotiate the contract.
All right, okay.
And that conversation was covered, so thank you for that. You know, things can change in the course of a life of a contract, so.
Sure, and I'm all about, you know, to keep a contract as broad as possible to catch all. That's, okay, thank you for that.
Good clarification, thank you.
Any other further questions or comments?
Yeah, I would just like to make sure that, especially the public is aware that, you know, even though we will be funding these students at the levels that are indicated on page 2, for the first year, 13,211, second year, 13,871, and the third year, 14,565. That does not include any additional costs that may be incurred by special ed, because as we as a district know, those can be quite excessive. And the town of Sherman is responsible for covering those costs,
Correct.
correct?
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Just to piggyback onto that, this does not include transportation.
That's correct.
So we are not covering that cost as well.
Sherman provides their own transportation. So Sherman pays this dollar amount for each student that comes here, plus any additional special ed, and they carry their own transportation.
Any further questions, comments? Yes, sir.
This is my last one.
Yeah, okay.
This is Bob's seat.
Gotta get the last word.
The Next Gen Accountability Report then, this piques my interest, because if we're providing Sherman with their aggregate data for their students and their cohort of students, they are going to be, but they're also in our accountability report, because they are students of New Milford High School, right?
They are.
Is there then an accountability report generated for that subgroup, or is it too smaller?
Very interesting question that we actually had, I was at the CAPS Technology Committee, maybe it was 2 weeks ago now, with the state data coordinator, and that conversation is an ongoing one. So right now, we provide Sherman kind of a carve-out of their students, so that they can kind of look at the effect of, did their K-8 curriculum, how did that prepare for high school? But kind of the accountability report side of that, the carve-out, who has access to that data? Does Sherman, they're paying tuition, do they still have it? They're not actually doing any of the education. So that's actually a very interesting conversation happening at the state level right now. But right now, those students are in our Next Gen Accountability Report.
Right, and it's not like it's a small enough cohort that's less than 20, that's personally identifiable, you got 93 students.
That's correct.
That's 93 other students that I would think they wouldn't want to be accountable for that.
Now, they're not all like juniors, I don't know if you, so like SAT, like their cohort of juniors is smaller than the 93, but it's an interesting conversation.
And as soon as they come in as freshmen to Milford High School, they're in our cohort throughout the time that they're here. Even if they move out of district, they're still accounted for in terms of graduation rate in 4 years, as in our New Milford number, not reported out separately. If they enter in at a different year and they come from another school, that number counts towards that school's accountability index and not necessarily not New Milford's.
So that's like their SASE number will follow them
Correct.
forever. But
That's how it's tracked.
They're still paired to New Milford.
Through the state database.
Mr. Corbin and I had a long conversation
Just
today
today.
on the, not that long actually, because there were other things going on, but it was interesting. There's a lot about that accountability piece that there's nuances that need to be worked out through the system. But yeah, if you start here as a freshman, you transfer to Danbury as a sophomore, and you drop out as a senior, that counts as our number, even if you're no longer enrolled here. So there's some kind of interesting nuances into that report. But we could talk a long time about that. I would love to.
Back to the contract.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments on the contract? Those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Items of information and discussion. Field trip reports? The important dates, 2018-19.
So each February, we put out a list of kind of save the dates for the next calendar year. Usually in April, we publish the full calendar, so this was presented at subcommittee. This will go on the website tomorrow, but this is, the anticipated first and last day of school, breaks. It's for families to plan around.
Thank you.
Can I say something? on this?
Absolutely.
Josh, thank you for getting this out as quickly as you do, because I know a lot of families try to plan their vacations and so forth, and this is very helpful to our community. So thanks for getting this put together so quickly.
Okay.
David?
Oh, Joe?
Are we getting closer and closer on, to moving school opening after the end of August, and like, say, New York State does? I see this shifting every year. I mean, we used to start the first month, the last Monday in August. Now we're
So
shifting.
there's probably several schools of thought on that. So in the past, this was driven in part, that one of those shifts you talked about is the state had a regional calendar that they were promoting. They have since retracted that language. So even though, at least on the draft I have here says regional calendar, that regional calendar is no longer official, and we can now break ranks, and no one really moved in that direction. And by the way, everybody had Election Day and Columbus Day as the same dates in the past. But we moved away from that. To your point, Mr. Fela, I would say there's two schools of thought. One would say move it earlier, because as you bump the last day of school later and snow days, this year, graduation's on the 24th of June, that if you moved that a week prior, then graduation could be moved to the earlier Saturday. So I think that decision for the fall after this calendar has not been made yet, but I think that's an ongoing conversation of basically, how do you extend the summer? Do you front load it, or do you push it back in the fall? And based on the winters we've had, right now, I think we'd be more inclined to start a week earlier than move a week later. But I have a whole year to figure that out.
Any other questions? Okay. The Town of New Milford Audit Report dated June 30th, 2017. Would just like to make a comment there. Again, that's on is it up on the town website?
I did not see it on the town
If you-
website. We did look today.
Okay, if you would like to see a copy or have a copy, let us know, and we'll be happy to get that to you.
He sent it too.
Yeah. No. Fuel tank report. Any
questions on
Oh, questions, I'm sorry.
No, just a couple questions. I did pick up my 170-page
Fine,
version
yes.
the other day. I haven't had a chance to
You're
give it a
you're not
good
done with
read
it yet?
But I can assure you I will. Couple questions just on this memo. The capital reserve is, obviously, it's based, all of this data or these numbers are based for the end of the year. So this number for the capital reserve, 1,123,000, that has not changed until now, or it has?
It has. We budgeted 322,000 in this year's budget. This is last year's capital reserve.
Right, so we're pulling that.
So take that number and
That's what I
reduce
wanted,
that.
okay.
That's correct.
I didn't want people to see this memo and think that that's.
Yeah,
what we
so
have.
we do not have that
Okay,
amount of money,
that-
it's
that
lower.
was- That was just a point of clarification. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Anything else?
It's a good audit report.
Yes, to be commended. The fuel tank report.
So let's speak to that. So what you have in the memo, in the packet is what's happened since the operations. Again, this is ongoing, so there are pieces that are coming in. We've now registered all tanks with the DEP, and we'll continue to keep this an active conversation on the replacement timeline and costs.
Yep.
Okay, so there was a lot of conversation at facilities and operations regarding this, so I would just like to follow up on this memo. So the suggested next steps, we basically have them all registered,
We do.
correct? Okay, was there a fee for that?
To register them?
Yes.
It's $50, $60?
I believe it was $60 per location.
Correct, okay. And it wasn't waived for any municipality, it's just, okay. And the suggested next steps on this, the suggestion is to go out to bid, is that correct?
Yeah,
Is
at
that
some
what I'm
point,
reading?
we're gonna
Is
need
that
to go
what
to
we're-
bid, yes.
Is that what this memo is telling us what we're going to be doing?
Yes.
Okay. And with a lead-in time of 6 to 14 weeks, and we're going out to bid on all three, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when we take that bid, we haven't really discussed a plan to pay for these yet.
So, right, so we would suggest that the first step is to go to bid and get a cost. And once we have a clear cost, then I think we're gonna have a conversation on how we fund that. Whether, as I think Mr. Fairlaw mentioned before, whether we start to speak to the town about combined projects and bond, whether we talk about capital reserve, whether we talk about some other mechanism. It's hard to have that conversation now because we don't have a scope of what the project costs.
But if I could just, I guess I'm still a little unclear as to the actual age and what our time frame is. Because in the report given to us on the Lillis building, it says 25 years plus. So how are we getting to the point of 25 years plus to being at a point of being fined?
At the time of the Lillis report, the age was not known, and the 25 plus was an estimate. Once we started doing the annual testing of the tanks, we were able to drill down and get an exact, well, actually weren't able to get an age of the Lillis tank, but we were able to get the age of this building and Helen Plank.
And what are those ages
1989, which puts it at 29 years.
on both of those?
Correct.
Okay, and at 30, supposedly I don't mean that disrespectfully, you know what I mean? Allegedly, the fine kicks into place
It
at 30.
actually has to come out of the ground in the 29th year.
It has to come out of the ground in the 29th.
Correct.
And if the tanks are not leaking or contaminating, and they are not, I don't want people to, from what we've been, how is it assessed? Only by age, or is it just?
No, it's a $10,000 initial fine, and then the DEP can assess a daily fine thereafter.
And the daily fee is not $10,000?
No.
Okay, because I think there was some confusion over
Correct.
that. The fine was the initial fine based on, the identity of the age, and then the daily fee is not $10,000 a day.
Correct.
I just want to make that clear. Okay, and do we know what the daily fees are?
No, I don't, not at this time.
Okay. Okay. And so this is on just for discussion, to kind of put this on the radar, that you're going to go out to bids and bring those bids back to the board and formulate a plan.
That's right.
Joe? We discussed this at length in subcommittee. I just have a hard time grasping the concept that we realize these tanks are a problem this year. And we have less than a year to work with it. I can't get my head around that. The other thing is, none of our tanks, and that's important, as Fallenbach said, are leaking. We had to make some minor changes to, more or less, the above ground, vents, overflows, etc. We have no contamination that we're aware of at any site right now. The other question is there a statute that says in the 29th year, these tanks must come out of the ground? All right, I'll look it up, but the other part of this is the state, DEP, has got to understand municipalities can't turn around and pull 10,000 gallon tanks out of the ground overnight at exorbitant cost. The minimum we were discussing is $100,000 a tank. I think personally we're rushing in a panic mode here, and the other part of it really bothers me is we're doing this in such a short time period. We just realize our tanks are almost 30 years old. And the part is, well, we never really checked. I know at Northville we replaced them, we moved them above ground. Everybody goes over to Northville, will see them sitting on the left-hand side of the building. They're up there. We know we have oil tanks in every building in our system. And I'm really struggling with spending maybe $400,000 at the very last minute. And it's particularly, if we had a leak, obviously, we have a hazardous condition. We don't, and I think we're getting ahead of ourselves here. And I'd like to know if the state will work with our municipality. I find it very hard to see that DEP is going to come down here January 1st, 2018, and start hitting the town of New Milford and school district with $10,000 fines. It does, show me a school district in the state of Connecticut where they've done it. I gotta believe almost every school district in this state's got underground tanks, unless it's a brand-new building. And nowadays, they're made of different materials. So for us to jump into a $300,000 or $400,000 expense, and the other part is because of those numbers, we need to have that communication with the town. Because these are the kind of situations that bonding is designed for. And in New Milford, if they've done nothing else over the years that I've been involved in whatever it is I've done over the last 15 years here, New Milford, in and of itself, does not go out to bond on a lot of stuff. Our ability to bond based on our auditors, we're nowhere near reaching our limits or even gonna, in fact, in years past, when I sat on the council, auditors actually kind of hoped we'd bond a little bit more. We're spending too much money out of our own taxes. This is something for the mayor and the council, but I think we're moving a little quick here on something that's not a problem, and I'd like to know what the state has to say. If they're gonna be down here January 1 in 2000, where are we, 18? I can't even tell, we're in 18 now. If we're down here January 1st, 2019, with $10,000 fines, well, then we got an issue. If not, then we need to work with the state, and I don't want us to be in panic mode here. Oil does scare everybody. Most of us probably have oil tanks in our houses, most of them probably in our basements. We understand. But, I think we're starting to try to set off alarm bells that need not be there. That's my position.
Thank you. Tammy, then Angie.
So I just have a quick question about this. So Kevin, have we contacted the state and asked, is there a stay of execution here? If we can show that our tanks are in decent condition, that they're not leaking, that there's not contamination, that we can have extra time to do this? Or is this just a steadfast no, the dates are the dates and they have to be followed?
That's a good question. There is no stay of execution per se, but if the state sees that we are taking proactive steps, like going out to bid, like, trying to access funds of some sort to pay for the project, they're not as likely to come down hard on you and start fining you, et cetera. I think they're more apt to do that if they see that you're not doing anything.
So have we reached out, though, to the state?
Yes, we have.
You have?
Yes,
Okay.
and in filing and registering the tanks with the proper ID numbers and locations, we've set that ball in motion.
Angie?
So just remind me, you said the central office was 1989?
No, we don't know the age of central
We don't know
office.
the age of central office. So Hill and Plain and Serenoma were the 1989s.
That's
So since we don't know the age necessarily of central office, we could conceivably push that off another year.
I would advise against that.
So what are the ages of Serenoma and the high school?
Sarah Noble is 1989, and the high school is 2000.
I'm sorry, and Northville.
Northville was 2008.
And I had asked at the subcommittee meeting about the statute, did you get that number for that?
Yes, I didn't bring it with me tonight, but we looked into it, and I believe that was part of the Friday notes from Mr. Smith, that we have to meet a lot of criteria in order to even apply for that 10-year extension, and none of our tanks meet the minimum criteria.
But we have not specifically asked the state in a memo or something to give us another year or two to kind of get some of this stuff.
We have reached out to them to ask them that question. We have not gotten a response.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
But I think what you're hearing is that this is a large expenditure that came to us after budget, after being presented a memo that it was $7,000 basically at facilities in the memo. That was what was, and granted, this all came about, but you go from 7,000 to 300,000, and a lot of questions come into play here. So from what I'm hearing, if we go out to bid and you're gathering these numbers and we've done the registration with the state and they're less likely to fine us because they know that we're putting in a financial plan, or at least we're showing the intent to replace these, would it be fair to say that it's a possibility that they still don't have to be done this year because the state is saying that we're putting those measures in place to try and work with the town and collaborate?
I really.
I'm not gonna hold you to
Right.
that, but that is a possibility, you know? I think that with what's going on in many municipalities, this is, it's a large number to come up with, and have, 6 or 7 months to do it. Regardless whether it comes out of bonding or capital reserve or wherever you pull the money from, the money's the money, and we still have to get it. So I think that we need to be cautious there and explore all of our options to make sure that we can't extend that time frame. And if there's a $10,000 penalty that's incurred, who knows what the cost is? If you add up the cost over the course of extending it, it may be prudent to do that if the state knows or working with them. I'm looking at exploring all the cost options. So I think, we're not bound by those bids when we go out to bid, correct?
That's right.
So we send them out, we get the numbers, we take a look at them, and kind of go from there, and gather some more information. Because there are other municipalities in this situation who have run into this. I haven't been able to uncover all that I need to do to see, there are regulations regarding this, but I think we need to move a little bit slowly, but I don't have a problem with this going out to bid, as long as we know that we don't need to act on them, and we need to get our numbers together with the town or the state.
Anybody else? Very well then. The thermal scan roof report, any questions on that or inquiries? Comments?
Short answer is we don't have that final report yet. It's being developed now. What we anticipate is that prior to the next facilities meeting, we will have that completed roof report.
Is that what buildings?
It is primarily Northville and Sarah Noble are the two big ones. And again, fact-finding, just like the oil tank review. We can't talk about what it's going to be until we know what it is. So just trying to gather information.
Thank you. And G, we have already covered. And please note the items of information at the bottom there. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Who was that? Who seconded?
Any discussion? Those in favor? And thank you, everybody, for coming this evening. Thank you, everybody.